Hi SQL friends, welcome to another webinar from SQL Maestros. Today's topic is SQL Server Scheduling Architecture. We are going to see a lot of things around SQL Server architecture, specifically internals about threads, workers, requests, tasks, schedulers, and a lot more things. Not only are we going to see the internals, but we are also going to run a few diagnostic queries, including troubleshooting threads and tasks, exactly when your query is waiting, what it is waiting for, etc. So couple of demos are planned for today. The demos and the folders are right in front of you. So let's just quickly go and see what we have for you today. We will first begin with an overview, then we will go into thread lifecycle, then moving forward with diagnostic queries like monitoring scheduler pressure, and finally troubleshooting the tasks. In other words, troubleshooting the query that you are trying to run. So it is totally demo packed. Now, one thing, whenever we talk about SQL Server scheduling architecture, sometimes you might confuse this or misunderstand this with the thread lifecycle. Or the query lifecycle. Let me put it that way, query lifecycle. So in today's session and today's content, we are talking a lot about SQL Server scheduling and the thread lifecycle, but not necessarily the query lifecycle. And let me take a moment to demystify that. When we talk about query lifecycle, we are essentially trying to understand what happens with your query when you submit it to SQL Server. In sense, how it interacts with the relational engine, the storage engine, the plan cache, the optimizer, etc., etc. So that is the world of query lifecycle. To be clear, we are not getting into that. We are limiting ourselves with the SQL Server operating system. So we are essentially going very low level and sticking to the SQL OS and keeping our focus on threads and tasks. That is why I use this term as scheduling architecture. So that's about today's content, today's topic, and today's demos, SQL Server scheduling architecture. Before we begin with the content, a few housekeeping announcements. First things first, a very common question that keeps coming in. What about this webinar? Is it going to be recorded? And if it is going to be recorded, where is it going to be available? So let me just minimize the VM and take you to sqlmaestros.com website. All our recorded webinars are available on sqlmaestros.com. The link is there in the chat window. You may want to take a note of it. If you go to the website, you have a recorded webinars section there on the menu. And if you click here on this one, browse recorded webinars, it will open up this section where you will be able to see all our webinars. As far as I remember, at least this year, all webinars have been recorded and have been put up here. When you visit this page, you might see that there are some webinars that are available for free, which means you can just add them to the cart and register and get lifetime access. You're not paying $1. You don't need to punch in your credit card or anything like that. And there are some webinars that are very nominally priced, just that it just helps us to keep running this show. Now you might wonder, hey Amit, there are so many webinars that are free and it is very painful to go and register for each webinar. You're right. You don't need to do that. If you really just want access to all our webinars, you can take up SQL Maestros free membership. Free membership will give you access to all the free webinars. And paid membership, the premium membership, will give you access to all the paid webinars. So all you need to do is the first link on the menu says join. If you click on that link, you will come up to this section where you have the free membership and you have the premium membership. Free membership will give you access to all our free tutorials and free webinars, and premium membership will give you access to all our paid webinars and premium advanced tutorials. Now, once you register, where is the content? Well, all you need to do is go to the video lobby. In video lobby, you will see free content and premium content. So for free users, for free members, just go to the free content and you get access to all the free tutorials and the free webinars. And if you have taken up premium membership, you need to go to the premium content where you will get all the paid stuff. These are annual membership and just very nominally priced. It helps us so that we can continue our webinar show each week, and we are putting up a lot of content each week, each day. And yeah, we sincerely hope that you're enjoying this content. Well, this is about the webinar. Let's go back to the VM. Second housekeeping question, the thing is the questions. All your questions, please post them in the Q&A panel. Please avoid the chat window. Third thing, thank you so much for joining today. I can see we have more than 200 people again today joining. Last week also we had more than 200 folks. So this is really overwhelming. Thank you. I know so many of you are from different part of the globe. So yeah, the time zone might not be very conducive for you, but yeah, we try to ensure that we are able to cater to maximum regions. So yeah, thanks for joining. Now, let's get into the content. Let's get into the demo right away. First, let's get into the overview. I will go inside this folder, 1_overview, open up the file, overview.sql. Let's connect and let's close the Object Explorer. We don't need it. Now, in order for me to explain you the SQL Server scheduling architecture, I'm going to take a very, very simplistic approach. Let's not talk too much fancy about the SQL OS and the internals and the engine. Let's take a very pragmatic approach to this. When you want to send a query to SQL Server, your simple select statement, the first thing that you do is you have to establish a connection with SQL Server. So you can see all the connections, the entities that are currently connected to SQL Server using a DMV called sysdm exec connections. Now, if you are new to DMV stands for Dynamic Management Views. These are objects that help you get inside the SQL Server and extract a lot of internals and state and health information of SQL Server. They're neatly categorized, like DM stands for Dynamic Management, and of course there are Dynamic Management Views and Dynamic Management Functions. Collectively we call them as Dynamic Management Objects. Exec here stands for the execution engine, and that's the prefix exec. So if you select this and execute, you will be able to see a lot of attributes related to the connection. So currently these are the number of connections, connections that are let's say connected to the SQL Server database engine. About important attributes in this DMV and many others that we are going to see, we will discuss it when the time comes. Now, the moment you are establishing a connection with SQL Server, in other words, you're also creating a session. But then remember that these are two different things. It all depends on how you are treating this, because when you are writing, let's say, a .NET application, then you first establish a connection and which you can track using sysdm exec connections. But let's say you're using Management Studio and you click on New Query. Clicking on New Query is actually doing two things. It's establishing a connection and you are as well creating a session. So all the sessions that are currently there with SQL Server, you can track them using the DMV called sysdm exec session. So let's go and execute this and you are able to see all the sessions there. Now, if I take, let's say if I take sessions and if you look at the total number of rows there, you will see 80. And for connections, let's say, execute this, you will see the number of rows are 6. Now I will create a new query window here. So let's go and click a new query window. So what has happened? You have established a connection and a new session. Let's go back to the DMVs and run the exec connections again. The connections, now you will be able to see 7 rows out there for connections, that additional one. And for sessions, you should see 81 sessions. So let's go and select this, and now if you look at the status bar there, you have 81 rows. Okay, just a very simple thing to explain. Now you have established a connection, you've got a session. Now comes your request. Now you got to understand that when you send a request to SQL Server may not accept your request immediately. It might take some time before it starts executing it. It is something like that. You've sent a request to SQL Server and your request might be waiting in a queue. It is a request, but it is still not a task. Task means now SQL Server has accepted your request and is willing to executed. Okay, so these are two different things, and that's why I use the third one as request and the task. So your simple select statement, select star from a table, let's say it is a request. You can track all the requests using the DMV sysdm exec requests, and you will be able to see a lot of different attributes. I'm not getting into these attributes immediately, and if you look at the number of attributes, they are just overwhelming. Not everything is important here, but of course there are certain important items that you might want to focus on. We'll do that in a moment. Then comes task. Now, as I said, the moment your request is accepted by SQL Server and SQL Server is willing to execute it, it becomes a task for it. Now SQL Server is executing your request and it is a task. You can track all the tasks using the DMV called sysdmos tasks. Now let's go and execute this, and you will be able to see the current executing tasks inside SQL Server. And the moment I run this DMV, you will get your attention to this attribute which says task state, and you can currently see that some tasks are running, some tasks are done, some tasks are suspended, so on and so forth. These are the different task states. We will again come to that in a moment. Another thing that you will observe now is the sysdmos, the OS thing here suddenly. So suddenly from exec we have moved to OS. So what's that difference? You know, friends, all this while when we were talking about connections, sessions and requests, technically speaking, they were all part of the execution engine. Now, the moment you come to things like tasks and threads like DemOS, you are now part of, or you're looking into the SQL operating system. Sometimes when we talk about the SQL Server operating system, it sounds very fluffy. You know, people think that, there's nothing like SQL Server operating system. I mean, it's just a database engine, but really, as part of the database engine, one of the major components of the engine is the OS, SQL OS as we call it. What is the job of an operating system? The job of an operating system is to manage resources like CPU, memory, IO, etc., etc. SQL Server is a complicated database engine. Its needs are very specific and special. And that is why it has its own internal operating system, which means it wants to manage all the resources by itself. It does not want to depend on Windows. That is why SQL OS is a mini OS programmed inside the engine. So all the resource management, thread management, task management, resource allocation, consumption, etc., is everything done by SQL Server itself. And that is why you have a couple of these DMVs that will allow you to extract a lot of metadata from the OS. And that's why you have this OS prefix to see all the OS related stuff. So if I just ran this one, sysdmos tasks, so that you are able to see all the currently executing tasks inside SQL Server engine. Now your request has become a task, and that is being executed. Now, from your computer science knowledge, you would know that when something has to be executed inside SQL Server, bare minimum, it needs one thread. Thread is that physical object, right, which will get scheduled on a CPU and will do your job, right? You can track all the threads that SQL Server is currently using using the DMV called DemOS threads. So let's go and select this and execute, and you will be able to see all the threads. So right now you can see that there are about 125 threads. The moment you see that number 125, you can see it right down there at the status bar. And let's say if I'm covering that, don't worry, you can trust me that the number is 125 there right now. Early in the days, back in the days when I was learning about all of those things, I was like, okay, connections are just 6 or 5. Sessions are just about 50 or 60. How come threads are 125 and tasks are also not so many? So what's that number to do? Means why so many threads? Well, there are a lot of background exclusive independent threads that are running. There is a thread for resource monitor. There is a thread for lazy writer. There is a thread for checkpoint process. Now, these are a lot of internal SQL Server operations, and there are threads for that. So a lot of background threads, a lot of system threads are also there. And along with that are your user threads. That's why this number is a little more than a lot of other objects that you see out there. Okay, so these are physical objects that are doing the job, and they get scheduled on the scheduler. What is a scheduler now? In simple words, scheduler is the logical processor. So right now, this VM, this SQL Server instance has 8 logical processors, because I have 8 processors and SQL Server instance is using all of them. So we can track all the schedulers that SQL Server is currently consuming using the DMV called select star from sysdmos scheduler. So let's just go and select this and execute, and you will be able to see all the schedulers. So I said 8, but now you can see more than 8. The remaining ones, the ones that I was talking about, the 8 ones, if you look at the status, they are visible online. These are the ones that are being used from 0 to 7, 8. If you look at the scheduler ID, the ones that are called as hidden online are basically just slices of the actual scheduler reserved for a lot of background threads. Of course, there are a lot of background threads running and they need CPU cycles, and you of course don't want, or let's say SQL Server does not want that your user threads stress the CPU system so much that even background threads are striving hard to get CPU cycles. So let's just forget about the hidden online things here right now, because they are all system and background stuff. What we are focused on is the one that are currently visible online, and these are the ones where your threads will get scheduled and are running, suspended, or whatever it is. Each scheduler here has a queue. We'll talk about that also in a moment. So when you talk about the SQL Server scheduling architecture, there are more pieces, but just for the sake of brevity, I have put down some of these. So you have connections, sessions, requests, tasks, threads, and schedulers. Now friends, what we want to do, okay, questions. If there are questions, please keep them coming in the Q&A window. Now, I talked about these things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's put all of them in a graphical illustration so that you just get an idea of what is going on. So what I will do is simply, let's take this PPT here, and hopefully you can see this now on the screen, and I would just run this one slide just to show you and put all of this together to understand the the overall execution, scheduling and execution. So what you see on the illustration here is a user on top left corner, then you have the database engine, the server out there, and the bottom right you see the schedulers. So what happens is the user establishes a connection with the SQL Server engine, and a session gets created. I purposely omitted out the connection because session is what we want to focus on, but I did say that a connection gets established first and then a session is created and there is a session ID. Let's say for this one, the session ID is 58. So that is making a contact point with the engine. Now the user is sending a request, let's say a very simple select statement. You can see all the requests in sysdm exec requests. Now that request is accepted by SQL Server and SQL Server decides to execute your request. Then it becomes a task. A task gets created and you can see that in sysdmos tasks. Now that task is assigned to a thread. You need a thread. So what SQL Server will do is pick up a thread from the thread pool. Yes, that is where the OS comes into the picture. All the thread management things SQL Server wants to do by itself. So the SQL operating system has an internal thread pool where you have all these idle threads, and one of the idle thread gets picked up and the request is scheduled, request is assigned to that thread. The job of assigning a task to a thread is done by worker, and that is why we use this term as this DMV, sysdmos worker, where you can track all the workers. Now workers is not a physical thing, it's more logical. Thread is the physical thing. That's why sometimes we interchangeably use this term as worker thread. So you have this worker which is assigning the task to a thread, and of course you can track that in sysdmos threads as I showed you, and then the thread gets scheduled on the scheduler. Worker does that job of assigning the thread to the scheduler, and once the execution is complete, the results are sent back to the client. Now a bit of color highlighting there. So you see dim exec session. These are the DMVs which are in execution environment, and the other ones are under the SQL OS operating system. And the result is sent back to the client. This is a very quick overview of scheduling and execution and all the different pieces that gets involved here. All right, hope we have started on a very good note there, and hope things are getting a bit clear. So questions, please keep them coming in the Q&A panel. And now this was just a very quick demo of part 1. Now what I will do in the second demo, I'm going to put all of these pieces together and actually run couple of requests like a select statement and an update statement, and try to extract more meaningful information so that you can just see what's going on. That necessarily may not be a diagnostic query or a troubleshooting scenario, which we are going to do in demo number 3 and demo number 4, but I want to run some real statements and show more meaningful output out of these DMVs. While your questions are coming in the Q&A panel, allow me just 30 seconds to make you aware of another thing that we are doing with SQLmaestros.com is the SQL Maestros Performance Tuning Live Masterclass. So I'll just take 30 seconds and quickly make you aware of this popular masterclass on performance tuning. If you are one of those who really want to attend a live class and want a lot of deep dive content, right from level 200 to 400 stuff, you might want to explore this masterclass, which is happening this December. And of course, after this December, we will execute it again next year as well. So all you need to do is when you go to SQLmaestros.com, there is a section here on a menu item called Master Classes, and you can click on Upcoming Master Classes, and you come up to this page where you will see SQL Server Performance Tuning Masterclass 40 hours. This is a lot of deep dive content. 40 hours, so we spread it across 2 weeks and we do 4 hours each day, Monday to Friday. The date, the time, everything is up on this page for you to explore. Most importantly, you should explore the course outline, the content. So we have module 1 all the way to module 14, packed with a lot of real world demos and content. So we are covering SQL Server architecture, scheduling, weights, and that is right in the first module. We go very deep, and this is where we talk about the weights, queues, query lifecycle, etc. And then from module 2, we straight away jump into performance tuning and troubleshooting, starting with CPU. Then we talk about TempDB, then we have IO, then we have memory. So we are basically covering what I call as the foursome, the awesome foursome: CPU, memory, IO, and TempDB. Followed by concurrency and transactions, query execution and plan analysis. Then we have statistics and index internals. And then comes favorite topics like query tuning and index tuning, plan caching and recompilation, then a lot of troubleshooting stuff with extended events, monitoring, tracing, and baselining, and covering all the new performance features in the latest versions of SQL Server. This masterclass has been very, very popular, and that's why we keep doing it in person and online, but we're focusing more on online because it helps you attend it from anywhere you are, and it's very live, very interactive the way I'm talking to you right now. And the biggest highlight is that you get to attend live, that to only 4 hours each day, so you can balance it with your job as well. You don't need to dedicate the whole day, and the entire class is recorded. 40 hours of content is recorded. The live class gets recorded, and you get access to the recording for a lifetime. That has been a huge pick, and community has really appreciated that a lot. So the entire class gets recorded, and you get those recordings. You get an account on SQLmaestros.com so that you can log in anytime, anywhere, and watch as many times as you want. So if this masterclass interests you, take a look at it and see if it is good for you or your colleagues, and you may just get this sponsored by your company or by your manager. The link to this masterclass is there in the chat window. Take a look and explore this. Okay, so I am continuing to answer questions in the Q&A panel, so please keep them coming in. Let's go back to the VM now. And we are done with the first demo overview. So let's just close it. Let's close this empty query window. Go back here. And now let's go and look into the second demo for today's session. If you want to watch the remainder part of the webinar and all the remaining demos, you can subscribe to the webinar on SQLmaestros.com and get lifetime access to the recorded webinar. All you have to do is just go to SQLmaestros.com, click on the recorded webinar section and get access to all the webinar recordings. There are many of them. Some of these webinars are free and some of them are very nominally priced. So the ones that you're interested in, you can subscribe to them and get lifetime access. Now, because there are so many webinars, subscribing to each webinar might be a bit cumbersome. So we have another option, which is SQL Maestros membership. So the first link on SQL Maestros says join. If you click on that, it will bring you to SQL Maestros membership. Things are very simple. There are two membership levels. The first level is free, where you get access to all the free webinars and all our tutorials and demos, more than 200, 300 demos and tutorials. All you have to do is just become a free member. You're paying nothing and you get access to all of them. So you don't have to go and subscribe to each webinar individually. Just become a free member and then explore the free video lobby. So if you go to the video lobby here, there is something called as free content where you get access to all of that. But then all of us are interested in advanced content, isn't it? And that is where premium membership comes into play. So the webinars that are paid, and there are many advanced tutorials and demos. If you want access to all of them, you can become a premium member and pay a nominal price, which is annual membership. Once you do that, you can explore the premium video lobby. If you go to the premium video lobby from here, or just go to the video lobby and click on premium content, you can see all the paid webinars and all the advanced tutorials and demos and get access to all of them with your annual membership. Anyway, choice is yours. There's a lot of content on SQLmaestros.com, and you can also explore the YouTube membership level as well. So you have free content on YouTube channel, and you can also join and become a member of SQL Maestros on YouTube, where you can pay a monthly fee, get access to all the paid webinars and advanced content. So in summary, you can go to SQLmaestros.com and become a member, or you can become a member on YouTube also. Becoming a member on SQLmaestros.com turns out to be a little cost effective with the annual membership in comparison to YouTube monthly membership. But anyway, choice is yours, whichever platform you wish to use. Happy SQL.